So, Stephen D here on Pure 24/7 Radio, and I am joined by Dr. Richard Scott, one of the writers for Pure Media, the magazine. Hello, Richard.
Stephen, it's good to meet again. I think this is the second time we've met now.
Yes, it is, and it's a pleasure to be joined by you. So we're here to talk about your March edition of the article in the magazine. That was a very clunky way of saying that. Your article for the March edition of Pure Media, the magazine. That's what we're here to talk about. So before we get into that, let's just recap. What is it you get up to?
Well, I'm in the happy position of having retired as a doctor at the age of 65 last July. So, I'm navigating retirement, which actually is very interesting because I prayed to the Lord, shut some doors and opened some doors, and a very dangerous prayer because, of course, he's done that. No, it's lovely, actually. Some doors have carried on. So speaking with you guys over the last 2 years or so has continued, which I'm grateful for. He has shut some doors, which I'm grateful for, in order to open up others because, we only have finite energy and time. And to do new things, you have to have old things, kicked into touch. So the Lord has done that, and I'm very grateful.
Excellent. So that's what it is you get up to. What has inspired this latest article for Pure Media, the magazine? A question of authenticity.
Yes. Well, usually what happens is something takes place in life, and it sparks, hopefully, a holy thought. So it was just a very small thing in my wife's car going wrong. It's been eating oil. It's a bit old now, needs changing. And twice as near, well, it stopped on her and it nearly cut out on me, just going down to 20 miles an hour because it ran out of oil. It was a sort of safety thing. Fortunately, it didn't totally stuff up the engine, but it was close. And it got me thinking. And then when I went to the garage to have a look at, not the garage, the dealership to have a look at some newer Fiat 500s, because she does like them. She's had three. They had some 600s in the garage, which I wasn't aware of till I spotted the 600s. And I looked at this thing and thought, that's not the same as a 500. It's very much a bigger car. It's an SUV, not a little compact 500. It's not the same thing. And it got me thinking that, they've used the name 600 to imply it's 500's big brother, but it's not an authentic big brother at all. It's a totally different beast, which got me thinking about authenticity. What does it mean to be authentic as a Christian? And I then led on to something that my daughter had said some years ago, which we can talk about if you like.
Absolutely. Yeah, let's get into that.
Well, I'm the proud parent of three daughters. And the oldest one sadly announced when she was 14 that she no longer wanted to go to church, which I suppose is every Christian parent's nightmare. It happens, we know that. And I knew that the way back would be long. And my wife actually said, look, you're an evangelist, but you are not the way back into church for Jess, the oldest girl. Okay. Now, do you know what I love about the Lord is that not only does he work in mysterious ways generally, but each of his mysterious ways, I think, applies to us, or I phrase that differently. His mysterious ways apply to each of us. So the way it applied to Jess, in order to get her back to church, was that I went on a job hunt one day and didn't get it, or rather it was a sort of pre-interview and it was quite clear the job wasn't coming my way. I'll leave the details to the magazine, so I won't give all the details away. But at the end of it, the guy who I was talking to, who was actually a friend of mine, said, there's someone you ought to meet. So I went to meet this guy. Turns out that he was a young Christian, very, very lively. And it got me thinking, I wonder whether he would talk to Jess, my daughter, who wasn't going to church and indeed had married a non-Christian, in order to encourage her to go back. Because she had said years previously, the reason I don't go to church is twofold. Number one, I don't like church. And number two, I don't like Christians. And I thought, well, that's a fairly good reason not to attend. And the reason being, she then told me some years later, is that Christians talk the talk, but don't walk the walk. Okay, I said, fine. So anyway, here's a guy, this young guy, and I'll leave the details for people to read the magazine, but he was a guy really walking the walk. She was so impressed, she decides to go to his church. In his church, she meets another Christian preacher, absolutely walking the walk, helping refugees in Essex, and was sufficiently persuaded to return to church. And it was about being authentic. She thought that Christians were simply effectively liars. You can talk but not walk the walk. That makes you a hypocrite, unauthentic or inauthentic, until she met some authentic Christians. And so my article was really around, the car was a sort of way into, are we authentic as Christians? If someone met Stephen D or me, Richard Scott, and looked at not just what we say, but what we do, would they be persuaded that Christianity is worth following? Are we walking the walk as well as talking the talk? And that can apply both ways, because there are many Christians who are fantastic at walking the walk, but are very reluctant to open their mouths for Christ. Well, Jesus did both, and he modeled it perfectly. So a word from them would be really quite effective. Whereas perhaps people like me, who are more evangelists, yeah, okay, you can talk the talk, but how does your life match up? We need to have both in alignment. So that's where the article's going.
That's it's a really tough challenge. That's one I'll have to think about. It reminds me, my favorite book in the Bible is the book of James, and in that book, it does clearly lay out the importance of our actions matching up with, our walking matching up with our talking. Is it matching up? And that is a tough pill to swallow. That is a very good challenge.
It is. And to be fair, Jesus hit, why was he so cross with the Pharisees? Well, they talked the talk and absolutely didn't walk the walk. And he laid into them big time, didn't he? Hypocrisy, you are, whitewashed tombs. Wow. Jesus, our lives, if we're to be authentic Christians, have to, we're not perfect. None of us are perfect, but we have to be striving to follow the master, as his original disciples did. And it's a challenge. But, if our lives aren't showing any change and any love towards people, compassion, authenticity, then, we have to question, have we really got it?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a really tough challenge, but also quite a familiar story. I think a lot of people can probably relate to the story of hearing of Christians not matching up, and they don't want to be a part of that. Hypocrisy being the reason that they wouldn't go to church is a very familiar thing. A lot of people say that, and so it is important that we're not hypocrites, that we do actually live as we speak. It's so important.
Just letting my dog in the room. She wanted to join us. There you are. Oh. She's with us. No, but you're right. And in fact, I get quite frustrated because lots of people use the hypocrisy argument. And as I make clear in the article, actually, the most impressive people I've ever met actually are Christians who are, I might say, walking the walk as well as talking the talk. But people often use this argument. So let's not give them any ammunition.
Yeah.
Let people look up at us and think, woof, they've got something. I want it. I remember there's a lovely phrase which I'll pass on as a freebie because I received it as a freebie. Let us be winsome in order to win some. And, our lives need to be winsome, attractive. And then people will be won for Christ. So there we are.
Yeah.
Thought for the day.
It's a really good thought. And I guess that's probably the thing that you want people to take away from this article, that idea of walking and talking the same way. So would that be correct?
In a nutshell, yeah.
The
Fiat 500 and not the Fiat 600 was just a little illustration. Cars don't change people's lives, but our actions and our talking and having the two, in sync, that's effective.
Yes, it's a really challenging thought, and we need to actually not just talk about it, but let's go and do that. Let's go and do something about this thought that we've had, this challenge that we've had. Are our lives matching up? And I think a good way might even be to ask some questions to people we know. Do you think?
Oh, sure, yeah. And actually, you can be quite honest. I mean, Jess told me, what I said to her, what have you got against church and Christians? So she told me. They talk the talk and they walk the walk. Asking questions. Jesus was a great one for asking questions. And it's, in fact, I remember reading a book by an American evangelist who worked on university campuses. And for 20 years, people would ask him a question and he'd give them a biblical answer. And very few people were won for Christ. Then he looked back at the scriptures and realized that only about 3 times did Jesus ever answer a question directly. Usually answered a question with another question to get people to really think. So he changed his approach, started asking a whole load more questions. And loads of people began to come to faith. And it was just let's ask questions more. That's a whole other subject itself.
Yes, that's a really good point. But yeah, that's an interesting story. So bringing it back to the main point of this article, how would you sum it up?
Well, I think God calls us to be authentic, and we'll make mistakes. And when we do, let's get back on our knees and ask for forgiveness. We'll miss opportunities to talk the talk when there is a time for talking, and we'll miss opportunities to walk the walk when there's a time for walking. But if we say for someone like myself who perhaps is stronger on talking than walking, then Lord, help me with my weak area. That's always a good prayer. Not just, oh, let me be better at the strong bit. No, help me with the weak bit. And if you're the other way around, you're really good at service, fantastic, but a bit reluctant to open your mouth for Christ. Lord, help me be bolder in speech. We want the two to marry up. So, and if we're perfectly aligned, and I'll be honest, very few of us are, but if we're perfectly aligned, well, don't be arrogant. Keep on doing the stuff. But let's ask the Lord to help us, because this, if we are acting and speaking like Jesus, we will be attractive and people will want to know more.
Excellent. Thank you so much for joining us, Richard Scott. It's been a pleasure to chat about this article. Really challenging. Thank you so much.
Bless you.